Coming up today, looking to rebuild damaged ties and cooperate on pending economy-related bills. President Park Geun-hye meets with the new look leadership of Korea's ruling party. Japan's parliament votes today on a number of highly controversial security bills which will allow the Japanese military to fight overseas for the first time since the Second World War. Plus, Greece votes yes on key reforms needed for a bailout from Europe. Violence erupts in Athens as protests build against the austerity measures. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's Thursday, July 16th. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start at Korea's presidential office, where President Park Geun-hye and the ruling Saenuri Party's new leadership met for the first time this morning. The two sides have recently made efforts to end their weeks-long impasse over the president's veto of disputed revisions to the National Assembly law and the resignation of former party floor leader Yoo Seung-min. Now, no details have been released yet, but President Park was expected to have emphasized the need for a strong, cooperative relationship while urging the party to work with the opposition to pass a supplementary budget bill to help the Korean economy after the MERS outbreak and the prolonged drought. While the presidential office and the ruling party are expected to normalize their consultative channels soon, the party will also likely suggest regular meetings for its leader and the president. As for President Park's expected granting of pardons next month, her spokesperson said she plans to gather opinions at today's meeting on the scope of amnesty to be granted. The lower house of parliament in Japan is set to vote today on a controversial set of security bills promoted by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The bills are expected to pass as Abe's ruling coalition holds a two-thirds majority in the lower house. Now, if the bills do pass, as expected, the ruling coalition plans to push them to the upper house and wrap up revisions on the bills before the current parliamentary session ends in late September. The set of bills, if enacted, will enable Japan to come to the military aid of an ally under attack. A special parliamentary committee passed the bill a day earlier, as you can see there, amid strong objections from opposition lawmakers, but not only them, citizens who organised mass protests in many parts of the country. In Tokyo alone, a record 60,000 protesters, as estimated by the organisers at least, rallied outside of the parliament, calling the legislation unconstitutional. And Japan is once again attempting to downplay its wartime atrocities and the use of forced labourers from Korea during its colonial rule. According to the Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun, the Foreign Ministry's Director General for Cultural Affairs, Jun Shin-mi, on Wednesday briefed some ruling party lawmakers on this matter, and he told them about follow-up measures the ministry will take to honour the victims who died at some of Japan's wartime industrial sites that were added to UNESCO's World Cultural Heritage List earlier this month. Now, he said that the ministry plans to include everyone who suffered there, regardless of their nationality. The newspaper interpreted the statement as meaning the scope of the victims may include not only Koreans, but also Japanese. Now, this is raising concerns that the issue of Korean forced labour may not be clearly introduced in the historical background for these facilities. Over in Europe now, and Greece's parliament has approved tough economic reform measures that are needed to secure a massive bailout from the Eurozone. But, as our Hyundai reports, the vote split the ruling Syriza party and was held amid sometimes violent anti-austerity protests.
229 lawmakers voted yes, 64 voted no, and 6 abstained. Therefore, the bill was passed by majority.
The Greek parliament gave the green light to harsh austerity measures early Thursday local time, opening the doors for talks with its Eurozone partners to secure a new bailout package of up to 86 billion euros. The measures passed include tax hikes and an increase in the retirement age. Prior to the vote, Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras made a passionate appeal to Parliament, saying there was no other choice to avert economic collapse.
I will admit that the measures we are tabling are harsh and I don't agree with them. I don't believe they will help the Greek economy, and I say so openly. But I also say that I must implement them. That is our difference.
But he failed to convince the hardline members of his own party, as half of the no votes came from the ruling Syriza party. Deputy Finance Minister and Syriza member Nadia Valavani resigned in protest. Ahead of the vote, thousands of Greek citizens took to the streets in Athens to protest the measures. Police responded with tear gas as the demonstration turned violent. Unions and trade associations representing public workers went on a 24-hour strike. Now, with a go-ahead from Parliament, Greece and Eurozone finance ministers are expected to begin talks Thursday on the urgent matter of providing Greece with short-term loans and setting a schedule for further negotiations. Hyundai, Arirang News.
Now, despite the recent turbulence in the global market, the U.S. economy has continued to improve, making a rate hike likely in the coming months. This is according to Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen in her speech to the House of Financial Services Committee on Wednesday local time. Yellen said that economic conditions will make it appropriate to raise rates at some point this year. If and when rates go up, it will be their first rise in nearly a decade. The Fed has kept rates at near zero for nearly 7 years now. Yellen added, if the pickup in the US continues, it will push the economy closer to the Fed's full employment and 2% inflation goals. She did caution, however, that there are still economic uncertainties to monitor, including inflation, and unanticipated developments could delay or even accelerate the rate rise. And the greatest threat to the Korean economy in the years ahead is the country's sliding exports to China. And this is the assessment of investment bank Morgan Stanley, which projects falling outbound shipments to the world's second largest economy to drag heavily on Korea's GDP. The bank says as Chinese firms are producing more high value added goods like smartphones, the country needs less from Korea. Also, with Beijing expected to export more of its goods to emerging markets like Southeast Asia, that will also eat into Seoul's existing market share. The bank advises Korea to find new growth areas to avoid direct competition with China. And the shipbuilding and auto industries, which are really the two sectors at the heartbeat of driving the Korean economy, they've been having a rough time of late due to the sluggish conditions at home and abroad. But showing solidarity with the sectors, Korea's trade minister visited the nation's biggest shipyard and automobile plant on Wednesday, where he hoped for better results in the second half of the year. Gwon So-ah reports from Ulsan.
They are Korea's biggest automaker and the world's largest shipbuilder. Hyundai Motor Company and Hyundai Heavy Industries, both of the headquarters situated in the southeastern city of Ulsan. Along with electronics and steel, they embody Korea's growth engines. But with the negative growth in outbound shipments throughout the first half of the year, there are growing concerns that Korea's key export sectors are somewhat shaky, especially the shipbuilding industry. Korea's Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik met with executives at the shipyard and encouraged them by emphasizing that Korea is still in the lead in the shipbuilding sector ahead of China and Japan. However, Korea's ship exports plunged more than 19% in June on year. Hyundai Heavy Industries saw a net loss of $1.9 billion in 2014, while it saw a net profit of around $130 million the year before. $2.8 billion of operating losses were posted last year. The picture is not looking promising in the automobile industry either. According to an anonymous source, Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors lowered their sales target for this year by around 10%. And seems like this slowing trend will continue for the time being, as forecasts for ship and car exports in the second half of the year is already expected to be gloomy. Despite this, the trade minister said that no efforts should be spared to overcome this situation.
It has never been easy. There have always been difficult times, but we have to overcome them. I came here to encourage you that producing one more car and exporting it always counts.
Yoon asked for more cooperation of the private sectors to work along with the latest export promotion plan unveiled last week, which includes a governmental spending of $100 billion to boost exports in the latter half of the year. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News, Ulsan.
The two Koreas are locked in talks to resolve a prolonged wage hike dispute at the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Park. According to the Unification Ministry in Seoul, this is the first meeting between the two sides since June last year. Tensions between Seoul and Pyongyang have been on the rise since February, when Pyongyang unilaterally raised the minimum monthly wage for around 55,000 North Korean workers at the park by a little over 5% to $74. Now, Seoul rejected that move, calling it a breach of a 2004 agreement stipulating the two sides set wages together through dialogue. In late May, the North accepted the South's tentative offer to pay wages at the current level of a little over $70 a month, buying the sides some time to resolve the issue through talks. A US defense agency has given the green light to the possible sale of parts, equipment and logistical support that will enable South Korea to upgrade its aging fleet of KF-16 fighter jets. The US Defense Security Corporation Agency says the deal, if approved by Congress, would cost Seoul around $2.5 billion. The sale would allow South Korea to upgrade 134 KF-16s. The principal contractors will be Lockheed Martin, which is the F-16's manufacturer, and Northrop Grumman. The US agency says the upgrade will allow South Korea to provide a powerful defensive and offensive capability to preserve security on the Korean peninsula. Now, some recently leaked data shows South Korea's intelligence service may have asked a foreign hacking group in 2013 to hack into a computer owned by a lawyer. The data that was posted on the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks shows a series of emails between the client, dubbed the 5163 Army Unit, and Italian surveillance malware vendor Hacking Team. Now, it's widely believed the 5163 Army Unit is a code name used by agents from South Korea's National Intelligence Service. From the emails, it isn't really clear who the identity of the target is or their nationality. Now, the spy agency admits to buying a hacking program from an Italian company, but denied using it to monitor South Koreans. It says it was meant to strengthen the country's cyber warfare capabilities against North Korea. Now, more astounding photos have been released of the dwarf planet Pluto. Thanks to NASA's New Horizons spacecraft, Pluto is no longer a bunch of blurry pixels, but a real visible world that has scientists tremendously excited. Son Jung-in reports.
NASA has unveiled new close-up and crystal-clear photos of Pluto less than 24 hours after the agency confirmed its New Horizons spacecraft successfully completed its flyby of the dwarf planet on the edge of our solar system.
Today, the New Horizons team is bringing what was previously a blurred point of light into focus.
The first high-resolution image that covers less than 1% of Pluto's surface shows a dynamic landscape, including mountains estimated to be 3.5 kilometers high. The close-up image doesn't show any visible impact craters, leading scientists to believe the surface is around 100 million years old, very young relative to the rest of the solar system, which was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. The photo also suggests Pluto is geologically active and is being sculpted not by outside forces, but by internal heat. But the more surprising discovery is that the mountains are thought to be composed of frozen water instead of rock, as previously assumed.
And we see water ice on Pluto for the first time. We can be very sure that the water is there in great abundance.
New Horizons also sent a new image of Charon, Pluto's largest moon, and a low-resolution image of Hydra, one of its small moons. NASA says it will spend the next 16 months analyzing the thousands of images that New Horizons will be transmitting back to Earth and releasing both images and scientific observations along the way. 손정인, Arirang News.
And finally now for a quick look at the weather here on Earth. It will be cloudy across most of the country today, Korea that is, with highs ranging from 21 to 32 degrees Celsius during the day. It's going to be dry across most of the country, but parts of Gangwon-do province and the east coast can expect occasional showers. Now, coastal areas are going to be hit by high winds and waves through Saturday as Typhoon Nanka heads towards the Japanese island of Okinawa. High wind warnings have been issued for Korea's port cities and islands, and people who might be heading out to sea should be wary of the heavy fog and also those high waves. That's Korea for you. Let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. And there's plenty more news on our website. It's worth checking out, arirang.com/news, and also our smartphone application. Just search for Arirang TV. You'll find all the latest news and programs on there as well. We do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.